it's kind of hard to find anyone who believes that Trump can end the war now. And I don't think many people believed from the start. I mean, I think Trump's comments about I can end it in 24 hours. It's a very simple deal to make. Most people here, well, I think everyone here realized that it's not a very simple deal to make, and you can't end it in 24 hours. I mean, it's the biggest war in Europe since 1945, and it's been going on. The full-scale war has been going on for 3 years, but the war on a more limited scale has been going on since 2014. So obviously, it's not something you can just sit down and make a deal about overnight.
Russia and Ukraine are accusing each other of breaking the 30-hour Easter truce, which was announced by Russia's President Putin just 24 hours ago. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says Russian shelling and drone activity increased this morning, while Russia's defense ministry is claiming that Ukraine has launched hundreds of drone attacks. The truce, which is supposed to last until midnight tomorrow, followed the warning from President Trump on Friday that he could take a pass on brokering further peace talks.
If for some reason one of the two parties makes it very difficult, we're just going to say you're foolish, you're fools, you're horrible people, and we're going to just take a pass. But hopefully we won't have to do that.
Well, let's get the latest from Marc Bennetts, the Times foreign correspondent who's in Kyiv. Good afternoon to you, Marc.
Good afternoon.
Well, we've got these competing claims. What are you able to tell us about what has been happening since this truce was supposed to come into effect?
Well, the truce, actually, it's supposed to run out at midnight tonight, not tomorrow. It was a 30-hour truce, which was announced yesterday. So it's almost at an end anyway. But effectively, it never started. Apart from Zelensky's comments about artillery and drone attacks, I spoke to a Ukrainian major in eastern Ukraine, who said that he could hear the boom of artillery constantly from the nearby front, and that Russian drones had continued to attack his men. Said some of his troops just escaped with their lives after a Russian drone hit the vehicle they were in. He said to me, "The Russians did not hear their butcher," he said, referring to Putin.
So the attacks have continued since the time just over 24 hours ago when it was supposed to come into effect.
Yeah, I mean, there's doesn't seem to be any question about the fact that Russia's continued to attack. The only thing that hasn't happened so far is there haven't been any ballistic or cruise missile attacks. That's the only part of the truce which Russia really seems to be observing. But as far as artillery attacks and drone attacks on the fronts, that's just kind of business as usual.
What about the claims from Russia that Ukraine has launched hundreds of drone attacks?
Well, we have Moscow's word for this, but Zelensky said when Putin announced the truce that they would respond to any Russian attacks. So I guess it's a situation here of you started it.
What is the sense there in Ukraine of this move by President Putin? Right from the outset, we were hearing from there, and we heard pretty swiftly from President Zelensky that he didn't believe what President Putin was saying about a pause in the fighting. But is there concern that the Russian leader may have done enough to perhaps avoid offending President Trump, that he might have convinced President Trump that he's serious about the process?
Possibly. I mean, it's up for debate whether Putin's truce was aimed at Trump or aimed at his own people, and trying to paint kind of the picture of a holy leader who cares about life, which patently he doesn't, but it may have been for internal propaganda, or for Trump, or for both. We don't know. But in Ukraine, it's kind of hard to find anyone who believes that Trump can end the war now. And I don't think many people believed from the start. I mean, I think Trump's comments about I can end it in 24 hours, it's a very simple deal to make. Most people here, well, I think everyone here realized that it's not a very simple deal to make, and you can't end it in 24 hours. I mean, it's the biggest war in Europe since 1945, and it's been going on. The full-scale war has been going on for 3 years, but the war on a more limited scale has been going on since 2014. So obviously, it's not something you can just sit down and make a deal about overnight.
But it does seem as though President Zelensky, since that very public bust-up at the White House with the US president, has been trying very hard to try to improve relations with the US. And there does seem to be at least the basis of a deal with the US in terms of US access to Ukraine's rare minerals.
But I think that's just more of a case of Zelensky realized he had to sign it to stop Trump completely washing his hands of the whole thing, and possibly, I mean, Trump hasn't approved a single military aid package for Ukraine since he came to office. And while the Biden administration stockpiled munitions, they're running out quite quickly. So, I mean, I think Zelensky was just being realistic here, and he realized that if he didn't sign something and sign it soon, then Trump would just walk away, not only from the peace negotiations, but walk away from helping Ukraine in the war. But speaking to people here, speaking to military, speaking to defense officials, I spoke to the secretary of the Ukrainian Parliament's Defense and Security Committee today, and he said that even if Ukraine loses US weapons, it won't give up, because 60% of the weapons are either made in Ukraine or coming from Europe right now. So while it would be a blow, it wouldn't necessarily force them to surrender.
Do you get the sense then that Ukraine is braced for the fact that when President Trump says he could take a pass on this, he's talking not just about the efforts to broker a peace deal, but in terms of US military and other support for Ukraine in this war?
I think there's definitely, I think people are being very careful about expressing overt anti-American sentiments, but it's hard not to get the impression when you talk to people that they're at the very least disappointed in the United States, and very wary that they're just going to be, that Washington is just going to abandon them, or in worst case, side with Russia.
Marc Bennetts, Times foreign correspondent in Kyiv. Great to speak to you. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
You're listening to Carol Walker on Times Radio.
Mr. President, do you think it's going to be a good meeting, sir? President Trump, what's your message to Vladimir Putin, sir? President Trump, do you have a message for Vladimir Putin as you meet with President Zelensky today?